Welcome to Down the Line with Charlie and Bo. I'm Sam Wilson. Today, Charlie and Bo invite a very special guest to the show. Bill Giles is responsible for the Philly Fanatic, and as you'll learn today, so much more. He joined the Phillies back in 1969 when the vet opened and worked his way up to chairman and then co-owner, and that's all coming up today on Down the Line. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's Main Streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreets.com. By Shibe Vintage Sports, where there's a story in every stitch. Check out their throwback sports gear at their Center City location or at shibesports.com. And by Phillies Nation, where informed fans go for news, rumors, events, and other fun stuff.
They're not just familiar faces. They're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home, where personality is served on a plate and imagination paints a brighter world. A place where fresh is always in stock with a personal touch passed down through generations. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
My name is Kenny Thomas and I'm the chief artist at Shibe Sports. I'm a big Philadelphia sports fan, a 4-for-4 guy.
I learned how to screen print in high school. Started making my own t-shirts at home, slowly grew and grew until I needed to get a studio. My name's Alex and I print t-shirts for Shibe Sports.
To actually be able to impact a culture with the things you make is one of the most important things an artist can ever do.
Well, Chuck, we have one of the guys that has been very influential in Philadelphia Philly baseball history, and Bill Giles. I know all our viewers know who he is. We don't have to introduce him. He's been influential in both our careers, but let's go all the way back to your first year in Philly. Before you got to Philly, you were in Houston. Maybe you can tell some of our viewers what your job was with the Astros.
Well, I was in Houston. I was basically the promotion guy. My goal was to try to get people in the ballpark and also to increase the television ratings. But I got involved down there in Houston with the circus, hotels, exhibition hall, and I got kind of out of the baseball part of it, and baseball was what I loved. So when the Carpenter family called me and asked me to come to Philadelphia to be the #1 baseball business guy, I jumped at it because I wanted to be in baseball.
No question. Bill, you know, everybody has somebody that was very influential in your life, and we all know your dad was president of the American League.
National League.
National League, excuse me, that's what I'm thinking of. Tell me how big an influence that your dad was.
Well, he was a huge influence because my mother died when I was 7 years old, and I was an only child. So I would literally raised in the baseball park, because I'd go to the ballpark with my dad, and I'd hang around after the game, and he'd have all the coaches and manager up to a little place where they'd have a beer and hot dog or something. And that was the beginning of my baseball career, really, when I was about 8 years old, just hanging out at the ballpark.
You know, we look back and your job was bringing people to the park, and let's be honest, in the early 70s, we weren't really good. We had a young team, Bull and Schmitty and Booney and myself. We just got called up and we were getting beat up pretty bad. That had to be a big challenge to you to get people to get interested. I know we were opening up a new stadium, but still, people don't like to see a team lose day in and day out.
Well, when I arrived with the Phillies, the attendance the year before I arrived was 423,000 for the whole season, which was hardly anything. And so I set out to do a lot of promotions, a lot of things that might make a family interested in coming, I didn't want to be completely dependent on the Phillies' one-loss record because it was a young team. And so we had all sorts of crazy things, and I put the usherettes in hot pants and had the Great Walenda and Kite Man, all those crazy things. My concept was to get to a point where Mom and Dad and the kids go to the game and say to themselves on the way home, we had a good time, and not be dependent on whether the Phillies won or lost. Just have fun. I like people to smile all the time. And the best way to get them to smile is to win ball games, but other things you can do too.
Well, you had a great impact on that whole in the 70s. There's no question about that. Charlie, I know that you followed Bill, and when you came to Philly, it was more or less, it was an established baseball team.
Right.
You know, you and I talk about going through the minor leagues being a tough challenge.
Right.
I'm sure Bill had to have some of those challenges also, and I'm sure you have a couple questions about, you know, it wasn't all wins and losses, but like Bill said, it was a family-oriented adventure going to Veterans Stadium.
Right. To this day, I still think that that our organization tries to be that way.
Right.
I think Dave Montgomery tried to be that way, but Bill, when someone says to me about Bill, you know, like, and I look back, you know, like the job that he did as far as getting Pete Rose here, getting Tony Perez here, getting Joe Morgan here, and the things that he did to help promote his team, you know, like where they would give him a chance to win, and his goal, of course, you know, like when you win, I guarantee you that right there really, you know, really played big on his goal to get people to the ballpark and actually getting them to have fun, and the laughter part of it is real. It's kind of like when you talk about the real part of it, Bo, it's kind of like last night when you and I go to Reading, and the people are, all these fans, Bill, they're hollering and screaming, and they want us to come and sit with them when they want our autograph.
Yeah.
And basically, he set out to do that.
Okay, we know you brought Phil and Phyllis. We know we're going to get into the Fanatic later, but you also brought a voiceover that a Hall of Fame announcer. How did that sort of? We're talking about Harry Callis. How did that sort of progress as you came over from Houston?
Well, Harry was the broadcaster in Houston when I was there, and I thought he was great, and he was a fun person. I played a lot of golf with him and socialized with him. And we had to fire Bill Campbell, who was a broadcaster with the team, but he did a lot of commercials for Schmidt's Beer. And when another beer came along, they didn't want him as the broadcaster because he was so connected to Schmidt's Beer. So we had to fire Bill Campbell. When we did, I knew exactly who I wanted, Harry Callis. And we got lucky because Harry Callis and Richie Ashburn, in my opinion, were the most entertaining baseball broadcast team I have ever heard. I mean, they were so funny, yet they gave you the true story of what was going on the field.
It was unbelievable. You got Harry with you for the World Series in 2008. I was with him my whole career, and that voice is something that to this day, when the Phillies win, they play that song after every win. A tremendous individual, very positive, and I'm sure you had a great relationship with him also.
Every day he used to come in on the road or at home. He used to come in my office, and he never asked me what my lineup was, and he never talked baseball to me. Wow. The only guy I ever heard, he had two guys that he would talk to me about, and he loved Utley and J. Rowe.
Right.
They used to talk, that was the two guys he talked about the most, and outside that we talked about just things in general.
Right.
But now the people in Philadelphia, absolutely everywhere we go to, they love him. Yeah. Harry's name always pops up. I mean, they ask about him all the time.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we have to go away for some business right now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the Philly Fanatic. And this man right here, he was the guy that brought the Philly Fanatic to Philadelphia.
Phillies Nation presents Questions from Fans.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Becky from Langhorne, and I'm wondering, is Sandlot one of your favorite movies?
My favorite baseball movie is The Natural. It's got some clips in there I absolutely adore.
Hi, this is the Penenti family from Northeast Philadelphia, and we're asking Charlie Manuel what his favorite memory was as a manager.
My favorite memory is, without a doubt, the 2008 World Series and going down Broad Street That was a big parade for Philly, and that was a big parade for our organization and our team. And I'm very happy to be part of that.
Hey there, Charlie. We are the Haggerty family. This is Scarlett. I'm Ashley. That's Sienna and Bill. We are from Absecon, New Jersey, and Scarlett has a question for you.
We wanted to know, what's your favorite car?
Scarlett, my favorite car is a Shelby Mustang, and it's a 1967 4-barrel carburetor, and it was, like what do you call it? It was an all-factory made car, and it was very fast, and it was a real sporty-looking automobile.
Phillies Nation is your source for breaking news, original analysis, trade insights, and more. With Credentials Access, our team of writers brings you first-hand accounts from your favorite players on today's team, minor league prospects of the future, and Phillies alumni from the past. Join our community and connect with hundreds of thousands of diehard fans through our social media accounts, tailgate parties, and charity events. Don't miss a thing. Be sure to visit PhilliesNation.com every day.
Charlie, I was the guy that was there when Phil and Phyllis, that was Bill's idea also, which at that time, I thought it was pretty cool, but let's go a step further. How did you come up with the Philly Fanatic? To me, and Charlie, you can make a statement about, he's the greatest mascot of all sports. There's no question.
I totally agree. And listen, also I like to say this, when I managed in AAA baseball, in Charlotte and Toledo, he used to come to our town or our city, like in Columbus. That one Sunday down there, he put on a show for them, and he had my hat off. He was rubbing my head and all this kind of stuff. And hey, totally, without a doubt, the best. And the time I was managing, I used to get out in the dugout, and I wanted to go be out there when he put on his little act.
Oh, he was good. How'd that come about?
It all came about because of Denny Lehman. Denny Lehman
Remember Denny?
Was a marketing guy, and he traveled with the team sometimes. And he came back from San Diego, and he'd seen the San Diego chicken. And he said, Bill, we have to have a mascot. The kids love it. There's less security problems when you have a mascot. And finally, after 2 or 3 times of him badgering me, I said, get a hold of the people that made Yellowbird on Sesame Street. And so I finally talked to them myself, and I told them, I said, guys, I want something green. I want something very fat with a big nose, undefinable, and funny looking. And they designed a thing, and I said, no, he's too thin, make him fatter. And they did, and we bought the costume, and kind of a mistake. I said, how much is it going to cost? And they said $320, and we keep the copyright. Or you can pay $500, and then you have the copyright. I had to pay them 2 years later $300,000 for the copyright. So that was the worst business deal I've ever made.
Yeah, no, hey, you know what? I think it turned out a lot better than you think it did.
Yeah,
because the kids love him, but not only that, the fans love him. Mom and Papa loves him. What the heck?
Yeah, once we had the costume, we had to figure out who was going to be in the costume.
Right.
And we had a mailroom guy, David Raymond, who played football at University of Delaware. And his mother was deaf. And he had to talk to his mother with his hand language. And so I said, he'd be good because I don't want the fanatic to talk. Just talk with his hands and his feet and his face. And sure enough, it really worked out.
Wow. Okay, so we've sort of journeyed through the mid-'70s. The team started getting much better. And then we'd get in the playoffs, and you're well aware, we'd play Cincinnati and the Dodgers, and I'll be honest, first time we were there, Bill, they were a better team, but the other 2 playoffs, as you well know, and Charlie, there was a play we didn't make, or a pitch we didn't get, or we didn't get a big hit, and we kept coming up short. And on behalf of you, because you realize that you're a good baseball guy, we were missing something. We didn't know what, because we had a good nucleus, and then you came up with the idea of Pete Rose. Let's go through that for our viewers out there.
Yeah, well, I couldn't believe it that Pete Rose became a free agent, because I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, so I knew the fans loved Pete. And when the Reds decided not to re-sign him, I went to the Carpenter family and to Paul Owens, our general manager, and I said, I think I might have an inside angle with Pete Rose, because my father really loved Pete. And Pete's wife, Carolyn, used to visit my dad when he was in the hospital, so there was a connection between the Giles and the Rose family. And so I convinced the Carpenters that we should try to sign him. We had a big to-do. He flew up from Cincinnati, and we wanted to pay him $600,000 at the most. And we had the meeting, and we were convinced at the end of the meeting that Kansas City was going to offer him $1 million a year. And so we said, we're not going to sign you for that much money. So I took him to the airport, and his agent, Reuben Katz, leans over and says, Bill, if you can get Ruley up to $800,000, we'll sign with the Phillies, because we had offered $600,000. And so I went back to my office and called Channel 17 at the time. And I said, you guys are going to get higher TV ratings if we get Pete Rose. You ought to give us more money. And sure enough, they gave us an extra $200,000.
Wow.
We went back to Pete Rose's agent and said, we got $800,000 a year for you. And they took it.
Tell you what, and I really believe, and Bill, you being a baseball guy, and Charlie, you probably watch that from afar. There's always something that you add at the end to put the icing on the cake, and in my opinion, it was two people. It was Dallas, but it was Pete Rose, the player. And for some reason, he brought that intensity. He raised the bar. The people loved the way, Philadelphia, blue-collar city, diving head first, knocking second basemen down. I mean, it was almost like a perfect marriage for us at that time. And Charlie, you watching over there, I mean, you had to see the difference when we got Pete in our lineup.
Without a doubt. I saw a lot of difference. I seen an offense that come to life. I seen more energy in the game, of course. If you would have asked me when I was a kid, who you want to be a player like, when I first got to the major leagues, I definitely would have said Pete Rose, because of his hustle. And because of how he played the ball game, and I think that definitely had a lot to do with the clubhouse and your team on the field and everything.
He really helped Mike Schmidt.
Oh yeah, big time.
Mike Schmidt was not a confident player, and Schmitty would tell Pete every day, "You're the best third baseman that ever lived."
That's a true story.
And
right.
Without that, I don't think Pete would have been as good as he was.
Right. Well, one story that I can relate to with Pete and Mike, we were playing the Mets, and there was this rookie pitcher that was coming up to pitch for the Mets, and I don't remember his name, but we were in the clubhouse, you talk before the game, and Pete's Mike's sweating and everything, and Pete says, "What are you sweating for?" He goes, "Man, I never faced this guy." And Pete looked at him, he goes, "Schmitty," he says, "you're one of the greatest players to ever play this game. Do you think that he's over there? And don't you think he's sweating, thinking about how am I going to get Mike Schmidt out?" Right. But Bill was right. Pete would give you that confidence every single day. It didn't matter who you were, whether it was Bull, whether it was me, Maddox, Schmitty. He just brought that extra energy every night. And you know what? You watch the game, Charlie. Usually when a guy gets a walk, he sprints to first, you say, well, that's fake. Right. He did it his whole career. So it wasn't fake. That's how he approached the game of baseball.
Actually, to me, like he said, an example of a guy that was a star player, and he was one of the biggest overachievers in the game. And he set an example of basically just how you look when you hustle and how you look when you play. And when the energy and the life and things like that. And when I see a guy like Pete Rose, and someone who reminded me of that would be Kirby Puckett. And because of his life, his energy, Puckett always carried a big smile, where Pete had a on his face, like it was intense.
Pete didn't smile too much.
It was very intense, and it was, I'm gonna beat you,
right?
And I'm gonna, we're gonna do everything we can. We got you. I come here today to win.
That's exactly right.
We'll be right back with more from Charlie and Bill.
My name is Kenny Thomas, and I'm the chief artist at Shibe Sports. I'm a big Philadelphia sports fan, a 4-for-4 guy.
I learned how to screen print in high school. Started making my own t-shirts at home, slowly grew and grew until I needed to get a studio. My name's Alex, and I print t-shirts for Shibe Sports.
To actually be able to impact a culture with the things you make is one of the most important things an artist can ever do.
All right, Chuck, we're back with Bill Giles, and we've sort of gone over Bill's career. I think for our viewers out there, in 1983, Bill, you took a chance. I mean, when I say took a chance, I mean, these guys were Hall of Fame players, but they were towards the end of their career. We're talking about Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Tony Perez, Al Holland. How did you envision that all coming together to get into a World Series?
Well, I just, you know, the Phillies were known as the Whiz Kids.
Right.
And I did it partly as a lark because we could call them the Wheeze Kids. So once I had Rose and then I got Joe Morgan to come over, I said, let's put Tony Perez in there too. Let all the old Whiz Kids become Wheeze Kids. And we won the pennant.
All right, Chuck, we're going to get into our favorite topic. Let's talk about the rule changes, and we'll get Bill's idea. You can start and ask him whatever one you want to ask.
Yeah, at second base, you know, you can no longer be aggressive and slide and, you know, like and go to take the runner out. You know, like, we'd like to know what you think about that rule.
Well, that one is probably good for the game because you'll have less injuries, but it's not as exciting from a fan standpoint. Also home plate.
Right.
Catcher's got to stay out of the way.
Right.
And let the guy slide. So it's all, I think, to protect the health of the player.
Myself, I like the action.
Yeah.
I like the guy coming across a bag, and I like to be able to take him out and stop him from getting a double play. And the reason is it gives us a better chance to win the game, and it's exciting. And tell me if I'm wrong or whatever. When our team, when I was managing the Phillies, when all of a sudden we became really aggressive on the bases, and we had Victorino, Rollins, and Utley, and Utley and Victorino would actually run over players. I mean, they would hit the catcher, and when they slid real hard, and you know, like and take the guy out at second base and things like that. And it was and I think at that time it showed the attitude of our team and the passion and all the chemistry.
I think back when Pete Rose ran over Ray Fosse.
Yeah, All-Star game.
In the All-Star game.
And you look at that as in his career, or definitely played a big part on his career. I remember that, and that was not good.
Right.
I mean,
but that's how Pete played. It wasn't a matter of.
But you know what? That's also how we were taught to play.
Right.
And things of that sort.
What do you think about the man on second in extra innings?
That rule I like.
You do like it.
I like it.
Because, now, let me ask you this: do you like it as a fan, or do you like it as a baseball savant?
I don't know whether I've been called a savant.
Well, you're pretty knowledgeable about baseball.
I like the strategy of it. I think it's really kind of cool to have that guy at second base. The manager, some of them bunt the guy over to third, some don't. And I think it's really an asset to enjoy the game, plus you don't go till 2 in the morning in the 15th inning.
But Charlie made a good point the other night. We were talking about this. Part of being successful going through 162 games is your farm system. Do you have depth in your farm system? If you play an 18-inning game and you come back with a 14-inning game the next day, this is a long race. It's not a sprint. So you want to see what organization is best equipped to go through 162 games. And I get it from a fan's viewpoint. They don't want to sit there for 5 or 6 hours. From a baseball standpoint, man, you want to make sure you have depth in your organization and you can overcome these extra inning games back to back.
Baseball today, and for 3 or 4 years, I guess, you really need depth the way the game is played.
Exactly.
When I was growing up with baseball, you had a starting pitcher and one relief pitcher.
Right.
And that was it. Now you have 5 relief pitchers
You get 5 starters and 8 relievers.
Well, a good example, 10 years ago, coming out of spring training, you'd say, we got 6 starters.
Right.
One of them would be in AAA.
Right.
Now we got to have 8 starters,
8 to 10, they say.
8 to 10.
Yep.
And that's a very good point.
Well, you know what, Chuck? We've been very fortunate to have Bill here with us today, and I just want to thank Bill for coming out and sort of sharing his experiences with all our viewers, because this is the man that has a lot to do with the Philadelphia Philly history.
He's still, I want to tell you something, like I said before, he has a huge passion for the game. Probably we can't measure it.
No question.
Because every time I see him, he lights up in a smile and he wants to talk baseball with me.
As we heard, Bill Giles still has a great passion for the game and a club that he loves. Our thanks to Scott Riley and the Philadelphia Country Club for hosting today's show. For Charlie and Bo, I'm Sam Wilson, and we'll catch you down the line. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's main streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreets.com. By Shibe Vintage Sports, where there's a story in every stitch. Check out their throwback sports gear at their Center City location or at shibesports.com. And by Phillies Nation, where informed fans go for news, rumors, events, and other fun stuff.